Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to take a look at that there Greater Possessed, what was revealed yesterday, I believe it was. Tell you what though, before we do that, let's have another look at the Master of Possession, because we do have an extra image of that model now, which shows off his back end, so to speak. Probably a better way to phrase that than that, wasn't there? This, to me, is still a silly model. But, before you get annoyed at me, I want to clarify something, because I made a video about this model when we first saw it, about how kind of daft it was. Being silly doesn't mean it's not good. You can be silly and great at the same time. I mean, looking at conversions especially, sticking a Imperial Knight chainsword on a Redemptor Dreadnought is unquestionably silly, and yet I did it anyway because it looked fucking cool. That is exactly the same attitude that I have to the Master of Possession. It's a very over-the-top model. It's a very excessive model. There are skulls all over the gaff. He has essentially enough to create an entire person out of the bones he has on his armour and hanging off his robes and on his staff and on his backpack and in his hand and so on and so forth. It's very like 80s metal album cover. It makes me think of like Iron Maiden and Megadeth, and that's not a bad thing. That at no point is a bad thing. I love the design of this guy. He's so excessive, he's so over the top, it's just so like old metal, and I like that a lot. I'm never ever going to sit there and go, well, I mean, it has all the things I like, but it's a little bit silly, therefore it's terrible. No, I like how silly it is. And that extends to the back of the model as well. He has the backpack, and the backpack has got like a fur cloak underneath it, with like raven feathers coming out of it. And there's more bones hanging from the back of him. He has actual skulls just as part of the backpack, because why not? It's very over the top. It is very, very over the top, and I really like it because of that. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. In the case of this model, it feels like they sat down and went, okay, we want to make something that's like proper 80s metal cheesy. Like, if you think of like a dark sorcerer, or like some sort of like fiery necromancer of some kind, what could we do to make that happen? And this feels like the result. What I don't like is when there is an idea behind a design and it ends up cartoony and not matching with the rest of like the aesthetic for an army. The old Possessed kit is a great example of this, and it's why I'm hoping it's going to be replaced. It's obviously going to be replaced, but the Possessed kit that we currently have access to doesn't really fit anything. It looks cartoonish in a bad way. It looks cheesy in a bad way. I don't like those models because they don't really match anything and they don't really work. They just feel off compared to the rest of the Chaos Space Marines army. This doesn't feel like any of that though. This feels like it fits with everything we already have and also sets the stage for a newer, like more interesting style for the Chaos Space Marines as a whole. And to be honest, I think it's perfectly illustrated by the fact that it is incredibly over the top. It is full of skulls and flame and ridiculousness. And yet, when you look at the Greater Possessed that they've shown off, that matches the Master of Possession whilst not having the same kind of over-the-top styling. I mean, it is a little bit excessive, but it's a Greater Possessed. It needs to have some of that demonic influence. The kind of skull and bones thing, sort of a prerequisite for that kind of thing. Even the Forge-World Galvorback have hints of that going on. Not as in-your-face as this, admittedly, but then what I was hoping for from New Possessed was kind of a middle ground between the style that we had before from Games Workshop, which I think was a bit too cartoony and didn't really fit, and the style that Forge World has. And this feels like it has that middle ground. It's very much in line with the kind of aesthetic that Games Workshop are presenting more and more now. But it also, that would fit with existing Chaos armies, and it would look absolutely at home next to the Master of Possession, which is exactly what you want. In terms of this model itself, I like pretty much all of it, to be honest. I'm struggling to find things that I really don't like. I think the only thing I would want is a bit more in the way of like the whole cracked armour thing, the kind of thing that Forge World did with the Galvorback models. And the Blade Slaves as well. I can't remember what the sorcerer's name is, but it's something damn near impossible to pronounce anyway. So Zardu? Val Zardu? Zar Zardu? Something like that. but there's the Blade Slaves kit as well. This feels like a nice kind of 40k version of those. It's not quite as gritty. It hasn't got the same kind of, split rent armor kind of thing that those models have, but it has nods to it. It has hints of that without just copying it outright, which I think is the right way to go, because the aesthetic for 40k is not the same aesthetic as Horus Heresy. I know they're the same, or similar universes, just about, earlier version of one, but when you actually look at the way that a lot of the armies are painted, when you look at the actual style choices between the two different ranges, the Horus Heresy range and the 40k range, there is quite a difference between the two. This is close enough to like the Gal Vorbak style of possession to make me happy, while still being completely at home with the Chaos Space Marine range as it is now, and the newer stuff that we know is coming as well. There's all sorts of things I really like about this. I have to admit, one of the things I really like the most is the cracked armor with it looks like kind of like growths coming out of, but that be his knee or his shin? Possibly both. Let's face it, if they're full of demons, they're not really going to function like a normal person anyway. I like things like the bone that is overlapping the armor. There's a nice kind of ambiguity there where it's like it could have pushed out from the armor, it could have been melded into the armor, the spikes in between could have grown, or they could have been there already. You can't really tell where the armor ends and where the person begins, which is the kind of look that I really wanted from the Possessed, but just done in a slightly better way than we currently have access to, and that's exactly what they've done. There's also actually a refreshing lack of like oversaturation. There isn't a bunch of like small unnecessary additions to this model, which is obviously a good thing. If you put this next to a Master of Possession, you do not want both of them to be covered in chains and skulls and flame. They need to have like a visual similarity, but also be significantly different to each other. And that's exactly what they've done. Yes, there is a skull on a chain, but actually when you look at it, that is pretty much all the dangly stuff you really have that is like just hanging off random parts of the model. There's some chains hanging down between the legs, but that's a fairly standard thing for Chaos at this point, and judging by the Blackstone Fortress stuff, we're going to see that a lot more. The kind of addition of things like loincloths and stuff, it seems to be heading in that direction. It's like a little bit of extra detail. Whether it's necessary or not, I think is entirely down to personal preference. I really like it. I prefer models that have something like that, especially kind of Chaos models and things like Dreadnoughts. I like putting like banners and stuff because it kind of fills that space. It makes it look a bit bigger in a way. It fills the space better. This doesn't look to be too excessive from it. It's a nice balance between obviously clearly chaotic, but it's not absolutely plastered with chaos symbols, because you don't need that. That's something I was a little bit worried about. There is a lot of over ornamentation going on at the moment with Games Workshop, and for some stuff it works great. And I will say, like, again, the Master of Possession works fantastic. There's so much dangly shit on that guy, and yet he looks fantastic. In other places, it doesn't work quite so well. And if we'd have had Possessed that had like chaos iconography all over them, it's superfluous. It's pointless. It's not necessary. We know what they are. We know who they serve. We unquestionably know who they serve and what they represent. And so you don't need all of that stuff. You don't need chaos stars all over the place. And we don't have that, which is exactly the right way to go. It's something where you just don't need to broadcast the loyalty of this particular model, because it's obvious just by looking at it who it's loyal to. The fact they've actually taken that on board and not done the thing of plastering it with symbols is definitely, in my opinion, a really good idea, because it would have been annoying to file them all off because they would have been totally superfluous to requirement. Things like the bone coming out of the shoulder plate, stuff like that. There are just little details on this that I really like. It is definitely more cartoony. It is definitely a different style to the Gal Vorbak, but I think it bridges the gap nicely, as I say, between the two different styles of the Horus Heresy and 40k. The only thing that I'd do differently in terms of painting for this, well, when I inevitably paint a bunch of them, which I will, I would prefer to have more of a clear indicator that the skull on the head, like the skull on the helmet, has like forced its way out of the metal. I would try and do something to make it more clear that that's the case. I do like the way that they've painted this, but that is one area where it's a little. Everywhere else, it's ambiguous in a good way, in my opinion. It's like it's the way the bone sticks out of the armor. It's like, was it there before? Is it part of the ornamentation? Has it grown out of it? Has the armor transformed into it? I can't really tell. I really like the fact that I can't tell. The helmet is the one bit where I think that falls down slightly, because it might just be the paint job, but it kind of looks like it was already there and has just kind of come to life a bit. But then again, it might not have done. It's a bit tricky to tell. There's like a weird hard border going on one side of it, but it's kind of faded into the black in other parts of it. I think probably I'd probably do something with a bit of like blood for the blood god or something. Make it look like it's kind of forced itself out of the metal a bit more. But that's like, to me, I think that's more just a painting thing than an actual modelling thing. I think you could probably make that look however you wanted. And you could feasibly make it look like it was just the faceplate of the helmet, and it's always got a skull on it. Which, let's face it, for Chaos is not exactly out of the ordinary. All you have to do is look at the Night Lords even before the Heresy. Love that shit. So, yeah, I mean, you can pretty much take it whichever way you like. So actually, I say I don't like it. I don't like that particular part of this paint job. The model itself, I don't have a problem with that bit after all, thinking about it. The skull on the wrist guard is maybe a little on the nose. Maybe a bit too kind of look. It's evil, innit? I feel like maybe that. I think I would probably file that off and do something else with it. I'd probably like crack the armor or something, or stick a couple of extra spikes out of there, because I don't think I'm a particular fan of the skull motif there. Like when it's a skull you've claimed off someone else and is hanging off your belt or something, okay with that. But on this specific model, that weirdly looks a little bit out of place, and I'm not sure I'd keep that. But for the most part, I mean, for pretty much everything else, I really like this. I like the style they've gone with it. I like the mix of styles that it seems to have. I like that it's just nowhere near as cartoony and just kind of lackluster as the current stock of possessed Marines. I think they're doing a pretty good job with this. I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of this now. The Rumour Demon engine seems to have come to an end at this point. It's been purged. It's been fixed. So we'll see normal Demon engine pictures, normal Rumour engine pictures from this point on. But of course, there is a bunch more Chaos stuff to be shown off, and at this point, I think it's pretty much confirmed that there's Terminators for a start, because we've seen a Reaper autocannon, and there was something else that was posted that looked very Terminator-esque. So, I mean, we've got these Greater Possessed. We're going to have replacement Possessed kit, no doubt about that. We've got the Chaos Space Marines that we still need to see a full squad picture of. We've seen the Master of Possession, but we've still got Abaddon. We've still got I'm assuming Havocs, Terminators. It's a sizable good release, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else they've done and how much they've managed to extend this style across the rest of the range. It's good. It's good times if you're a Chaos player. Well, it is sort of good times. It's also bad times because my wallet is absolutely crying because I've still got to buy a couple of Redemptors and also all of this now, apparently. So that's nice. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think of this Greater Possessed chap down in the comments below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.